This is 4D part 3, where we're looking at what we call the unmatched query. Now in the last tutorial, the most difficult tutorial of the whole coursework, you looked at how to create a query that would find unavailable rooms. So I've just put that up here so that we can actually see it. We've got our list of unavailable rooms, 15, 2, 9 and 9. And what we want to do is we want to find from the room table, so here's our list of rooms, okay, so you've got rooms 1 through to 18, we want to find all of the rooms except 15, 2 and 9. So we don't want 2, we don't want 5 and we don't want 9. And so what we do is we create what's called an unmatched query, so it will find all the rooms that are not matched, that are unmatched with those. So normally when we create a query we would go to design view, but we're going to use a query wizard because that will do the complicated parts for us. And we're going to go to what we call this unmatched query, so we'll select that within our wizard. And it then says which table or query contains records you want in the query results. Okay, so in other words we want the rooms in the results. But it's not just going to be the rooms, because we also need to include the room type, the description of the room type. So actually it's that link between the room with the type. In the real coursework you haven't got to worry about this sort of thing, you're just going to be using a table. But in this case I've got this extra table, so it's the one that links the rooms and the types together. Or you can just use room for the purpose of practice, but we'll go with that. Now it says which table or query contains the related records, so the records that we don't want to include in that list of rooms. Well, that will be a query, and the query that we're looking for is the unavailable rooms. We don't want them to be listed. It's now asking me to match the fields that will tell me which records not to include. So it's room ID that needs to match on the two, and I click this button here and it puts them in as matching fields. Now it says which fields we want to see in the query results. Well, this is what do we want to see in the combo box, because if you remember, the whole purpose of doing this is so that we can have our select room showing us only the rooms that are available. So we need the room ID because that's what will get stored. We need the room number, the floor might be useful, and the description might be useful. You might choose other things like disabled access. It doesn't actually specify, so that's absolutely fine. I now got to give it a query, the query a name, so I'm going to call this query available rooms, because that's what it's going to show us, are the available rooms. Let's have a look. It not to include 2, 9 and 15. So 2's missing, 9's missing, 15's missing. Let's just double check that by looking over at the right hand side. It was 2, 9 and 15 we didn't want it to include. So it's done its job for us. Just one last thing, if we go to the design view, just to make it easier to follow in the drop down box, I'm going to add the sort order and make it ascending. But it's certainly not going to gain you any extra marks, but it makes sense that you may as well do that. So we've created that query. There it is. We'll close that now and save it as we go along. And now we need to make some changes to our reservation form, because at the moment when we select the room, it's just selecting the whole list of rooms. We only want it to select from the available rooms. So if we go to design view, and we'll have a look at the properties of the room, see that its row source, which is where it gets its data from, says query room with type. We actually want it to be available rooms. So if I change that to available rooms, the rest of it should stay the same. It should still pick up the data that's required and it should still save it. If we view and now select the room, look at that, 2, 9 and 15 are missing, which is exactly what we want. The other way you could do it is recreate that combo box completely from scratch. It only takes a few seconds. It might be easier for you providing your evidence by doing it that way anyway, because then you've only got to show that you created the combo box once. So that's now working, but there is still a little bit of a problem with this. Just zoom back in, and if we were to change these dates, let's say to 2015, I would now expect a different list of available rooms, but I haven't. I've still got exactly the same list, and the reason is because that drop down box needs to be refreshed or requeried. Let's put these back to 2016, and we'll go back into our design view, and we'll set it up so that whenever we make a change to the check-in date or the checkout date, it will requery. So you want the event tab for the check-in date, and we're going to use after update. And if you click on these three dots here, you get the option to choose code builder. So if I click on OK, it will take us into the code. Now it's quite straightforward code, so I've got no qualms about using this. It's the form room, which is the name of the drop down box, what we called it. So we say that we want the form room and we want to requery it, and that's all we have to do. So we now close that down and do exactly the same for the checkout date. So we go for after update, code builder, and we just put in here form room dot requery. You can actually see here, look, this is the check-in date after update and the checkout date after update. So we'll just close Visual Basic for Applications, and let's try it out and see if it works this time. So at the moment, look, we've got those rooms there. Let's change this to 2015, and now we have a different set of rooms. It includes 1, 2, it includes 9, includes 15. In fact, for those specific dates that I've chosen, it actually includes all the rooms. We'll just double check this and see. We'll change this to be the 24th to the 25th, and at least one of those rooms should pop back in. There it is, room number 2's popped back into the list as being available. So that's this whole thing completed. Quite a lot involved there in order to do it, and if you've done that, all well done and congratulations. But don't pat yourself on the back too quickly, because you don't get the marks just for doing the technical work. Sadly, you have to annotate it all to explain everything that you've done, and that's the only way you can get the marks. Whether we agree with it or disagree with it, it's got to be done. So what you'll now need to do is watch the next video tutorial, look at how it's been annotated in the similar but different tasks, and then when you do the real coursework, you'll be able to look at how to go about that annotation in the real coursework.